Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Welcome to another video. Thank you all for joining me for another one. Now, as you can see, we're back in the office and we're not traveling this week, which is awesome because sometimes travel does get a little tiring, but we're back here and I have another video, and specifically we're gonna talk about the tech side of the house today. And guys, an era has come to an end. So 3 years ago, roughly around when I started this channel, one of the first videos that I created on this channel, and especially one of the most popular ones, which is kind of crazy to think about, has to do with a device called a 4G LTE CellSpot. Now this device is something that T-Mobile came out with a couple of years ago, and they used it in order to combat poor signal coverage in your home. And if you watch this channel for quite some time now, you realize that a lot of what I teach you guys are things that I either use in the home from a technology perspective, or maybe I've used it in order to help me out in some shape or form. And so as you can imagine, I've had T-Mobiles throughout the years, and wherever I moved around in the country, depending on where I was, the cell coverage wasn't always the greatest in my home specifically. And there's a lot of reasons for that, and we're not gonna dive too much into the technicals of why, but this device that I have used throughout the years has really allowed me to overcome a lot of those signal issues that I had inside the home. For those who are watching and don't know what I'm talking about, I'll go ahead and put a link in the description and possibly somewhere up on the screen here of the video that I created. But real quickly, in a nutshell, it's a device that connects to your internet connection at home. And once you go ahead and power it and connect it to your internet, and it had a little GPS module, it would go ahead and connect to T-Mobile's network over the internet using your internet connection. And once it makes that connection to T-Mobile, it becomes its own little cell tower, and we call that a female cell, in your home. And at the time that I was using this, it had both a 3G and 4G LTE signal that is shot out throughout your home. As time has gone on, you start to see why this device starts to become a little bit obsolete. Number one, T-Mobile shut down their 3G network, and I believe back in 2022, if memory serves me correctly. So if you have this device and you notice that it has 3G capabilities, the light that turns green for your 3G signal no longer turns on, because quite some time ago, when T-Mobile shut down their 3G network, they also released a firmware update that disables the 3G signal or the 3G radios inside of this 4G LTE CellSpot. Okay, so that means then that the only thing left on the device is 4G LTE that works, but even still, it still worked phenomenally with that 4G LTE. And the reason why I loved it and utilized it in my home a lot is because that little cell tower in your house now can provide you phenomenal native coverage on your phone, and it covers most spaces, and I believe, if I remember from the documentation, it can go up to 3,000 square feet. Now, over the years, as people have commented on the video and said, hey, why would I need to buy another device, or why not just use Wi-Fi calling, which is built into the phones? Those are all valid points. But I would tell you that this device still offered some features that I enjoyed over Wi-Fi calling. And then on top of that too, depending on what kind of customer you were, T-Mobile actually gave those devices out for free. And the reason why I say that is because I was one of those customers. I got the device for free and I didn't have to pay anything for it. Now, one feature that I'll talk about real quick about why I decided to keep this device in my home was the network handoffs. Now, if you don't know what network handoff is, I'll go ahead and give you an example so that way you can clearly see that. Imagine you starting a phone call in your home and you realize that you have to step out of the house in order to run an errand. Maybe you're making a recipe and you forgot an item and you need to head to the store. Whatever the case might be, you pop on your Bluetooth, you head in the car, and you start driving away to the store or wherever that errand that needs to be completed. A network handoff simply means that you start the call in your house and you're connected to that 4G LTE CellSpot. And as soon as you get into your vehicle and as soon as you start driving away from your house, that call will be transferred from that female cell or the 4G LTE CellSpot in your house to the closest T-Mobile cell tower in the area, allowing you to continue your phone call. And that was a feature that you really didn't get in Wi-Fi calling. You can literally start a call in your home, utilize Wi-Fi calling, and then as soon as you get out of coverage from your Wi-Fi router, the call just simply dropped. And it was really a pain in the butt, to be quite honest. So now that you know a little bit about what a 4G LTE CellSpot is and why I utilized it throughout the years, more importantly, let's jump into an article that hit my desk. And I want to read it with you because unfortunately it looks like T-Mobile is phasing away these devices and you can no longer get them. Let's jump into the article real quick and let's talk about it. So I got the article up here for you guys, and let's go through this short little read. It's only about 2 minutes, as you see here. And the guy, I guess, who wrote this, or the username, is jman100. And it was written back in April 3rd. So let's go ahead and jump into it. It says here that T-Mobile's infamous CellSpot coverage devices are now end of life. It says here, it may seem rare nowadays, but there was a time where some areas of the US, even large cities and major areas, had no cell coverage. And it was common that in 2015, T-Mobile released a device called a 4G LTE CellSpot to fill in the gaps. And by the way, guys, if you're old enough like me, and I hate to say this, but there was a time where cell coverage wasn't that great, and especially with T-Mobile. T-Mobile that you know today is not the T-Mobile that used to be back in those days. So when I first started with T-Mobile, I believe it was around 2014, 2015 timeframe. And during that time, Verizon, I think, was #1, and T-Mobile was in very last place, right neck and neck with Sprint, actually. And Sprint was, I think, the worst out of all of them. And so one of the ways in which T-Mobile had to combat the great network that Verizon and AT&T had at the time is they had to come up with phenomenal plans in order to entice customers to come and switch over from Verizon and AT&T. And in an exchange for phenomenal pricing and phenomenal plans, of course, you're going to suffer when it comes to coverage. So now you're starting to see why this device was created, because at the time, they didn't really have good coverage. So how do you make sure you still provide a good quality of service without losing a lot of customers? Because ultimately, you can't just win on pricing or plans, right? You have to make sure that they have service. And one of the areas where people are mostly at is either their home or at work. And if you can figure out those two, you'll be in pretty good shape. And so in order to figure out the home problem, of course, here's a device that they made. So moving on. It says here the 4G LTE CellSpot creates your own personal mini cell tower using your existing home internet services. We just talked about that. The device connects to your internet via Ethernet and broadcasts a short-range LTE signal for your phones to pick up. And of course, we just talked about that too. One of the things that I forgot to even mention earlier, and I forgot to say this, is that a lot of people also as well in the comments were telling me, hey, if I have Wi-Fi calling, why would I even get this device? And remember when I talked about it does a 4G LTE native cell signal in your house? People don't realize that cell carriers like T-Mobile, Verizon, whoever, they don't make phones. They just go ahead and operate a network and provide service to your devices. So these devices that you buy, specifically the ones that I have in my hand right now, they're created by companies such as Samsung, Motorola, whoever. It is up to them to go ahead and create those features in those phones. So for example, Wi-Fi calling, that is a feature, that is something that is implemented by the cell manufacturer. It is then certified by the cell providers in order to make sure things are working properly. So meaning that back then, Wi-Fi calling was a new feature that was being implemented and not all devices had it at the time. So you may have bought a phone that didn't have Wi-Fi calling. And so if it didn't have Wi-Fi calling, what were you going to do? And so in hindsight, now that Wi-Fi calling is ubiquitous, yes, this device seems a little obsolete, but back then, not really so much, right? So we talked about some of the features, and that was another big reason why I used this device throughout the years. So moving on with the article here, it says here in mid-2021, the company stopped offering the device for free. So as you can see here, it was free at a certain time for those people who didn't believe me. And it says here, and instead required a $99 one-time purchase for new customers interested in the device. By the way, you can get away with that depending on what kind of customer you were. Believe it or not, I don't know if you know this, but cell companies, they actually rate you based off of your payment history and all kinds of stuff. So you can be one of their top customers that they want to keep you and give you certain benefits that others don't get. Or if you don't pay your bill on time and they're not really making much revenue off of you, you already know where that goes, right? So anyways, moving on. It says here, while the LTE CellSpot was probably the most popular option, some customers opted for the personal Wi-Fi CellSpot instead, and it was released a year prior to the LTE CellSpot back in 2014. And the device basically was just an Asus router that was rebranded with T-Mobile logos. Now, for those who don't know, T-Mobile had 3 different devices. They had the CellSpot, which is what we're talking about today. They had the Wi-Fi CellSpot, which is, of course, this router, which essentially was a free router. And then you can use Wi-Fi calling in your device in order to connect to it. And that's how you would improve coverage. So it says here the Wi-Fi unit was basically a way of giving customer a free path to help them use newly released Wi-Fi calling and texting features at home, as you start to see there. It says finally there was a CellSpot signal booster. I actually had this device too. And the signal booster is a two-piece unit that extended T-Mobile's native coverage from a window unit wirelessly to a separate unit further inside the home. It was ideal for customers in areas with some native T-Mobile coverage, but struggled to receive that signal indoors. Without going too much into the technical details, the further you are away from a cell tower, the farther that signal has to travel from the cell tower. And of course, over a distance, a signal degrades. Once the signal starts to degrade, you also have to think about, okay, it has to penetrate through certain materials in order to get to my cell device. You have to think about how it has to go through concrete, maybe it has to go through some drywall, it has to go through some other types of materials in order to reach your device. Of course, that is where you will struggle with having good cell coverage in your house. And so this device was really used in order to put it at a location where you had great coverage. So for example, a window, and then it would actually blanket the house by shooting that signal over to the other device. And again, you would take the second device and put it somewhere in your house, preferably in a good location that's further away and can blanket the whole entire house, thus having essentially a repeater in your home in order to get that signal from outside the home, inside the home. And that was another way to combat poor quality signal inside of the house when it came to T-Mobile coverage back then. Now moving on, it says here, now as of early mid-February of this year, all three of these devices are now end of life. Not only are they no longer available to acquire from T-Mobile, but the company doesn't even want them back. And by the way, guys, I don't know if you knew, but these devices, if you didn't return them and you were a T-Mobile customer looking to leave, they would actually charge you for them. And that was something that I was cognizant of. And I said to myself, if I was ever going to leave T-Mobile, then I would have to return these devices because they charged you a lot of money if you didn't return them. Don't quote me on this, but I think it was somewhere around the realm of like $350 to like $500, somewhere around there per device. And again, if you received that device for free like I was, you weren't gonna really wanna pay that kind of money just because you didn't bother returning them. So I made sure to obviously return it if I would have left T-Mobile. So moving on here, it says here, according to sources from within T-Mobile, the NRF or non-return fee for all these devices is now 0. This means that upon cancellation of T-Mobile services, a customer that still has any of these devices won't have to bother returning them to the company. Now the article goes on to say that this is good because as recently as late 2023, customers complained of fees upwards of $500 for failing to return a CellSpot. See, I told you, it was quite hefty actually. Even though T-Mobile wasn't even really using them anymore. It's unclear if customers who still have LTE CellSpots still have working service on them, but we'd imagine that if they do, it won't last for much longer. The devices don't support 5G, and most native coverage now from T-Mobile includes both 5G and low-band frequencies that reach indoors pretty well. And then the article goes on to say, do you still have the devices, so on and so forth. And here's the thing, guys, and here's what I can tell you. For the time being, as of this recording, yes, the device does work. I have actually one of them in my account. I don't necessarily use it, somebody else uses it, but it actually still works. And it's great to see that I don't have to return it now because it's one less thing that I have to worry about. And I have to painstakingly admit that one of my most popular videos that I made 3 years ago is really no longer relevant. And the reason why it's no longer relevant is because we have Wi-Fi calling now. And there's so many things that you can do in order to combat some of those network issues that we've had in the past. And again, one of the big reasons why I love this device, I talked about some of the features, the network handoff. It was free. You didn't have to pay anything extra, right? Most people had internet already in their house. All they had to do was request it from T-Mobile if you were a good customer, of course. Sometimes they did charge, but again, I received it for free. And then the other thing too that I really enjoyed is that, of course, not every device came with Wi-Fi calling. So it provided that native LTE signal or 3G signal back then as well in order to be able to have the devices communicate even if they didn't have Wi-Fi calling. Nowadays, I would highly recommend just using Wi-Fi calling, and especially since routers have gotten much better in performance, and also as well, they're cheaper. So even if you struggle with Wi-Fi coverage in your house, You can look into options such as mesh networks, and they've gotten to the point now where they're affordable, whereas back then that was a new technology and it really was cost prohibitive for a lot of people, which is another reason why I always recommended people to get that free device if you qualified for free, because it was something where it can really boost your signals without costing you any additional monies. Anyways, guys, that's a little history on the 4G LTE CellSpot. Again, where we came from, why it was made in the first place. Sad to see that the device is going away, but again, I gave you guys some solutions in order to be able to overcome some of those signal challenges in your home. So take a look at Wi-Fi calling, and last but not least, to be quite honest, maybe it's best off that you start taking a look at another carrier if T-Mobile doesn't work in your favor. Now, maybe I should make another video for you guys about T-Mobile, because honestly, between you and I actually got a text from T-Mobile saying that I have one of these older plans and they're looking to raise my rates just because I have an older plan, and they're telling me that I guess cost has gone up and they need to pass the cost over to me. But it's interesting because back then when I signed up for T-Mobile, they actually told me that I had this price lock guaranteed for life, which is kind of interesting. Maybe that should be an idea for the next video of where I decide to go and why I decided to do it, because I'm not liking how they can just raise my rates whenever just because they feel like it, even though I signed something that says you're gonna lock in my rates for life. Kind of interesting on how people change their words, or should I say companies change their words. That is a great way to destroy business relationships. You promised me something for the life of my business, and so you should uphold that, to be quite honest. But anyways, guys, I don't want to go on that rant. I've already spoke about it enough. Thanks for watching. I appreciate you guys for being here. And if this video has helped you out and it provided some value for you, go ahead and hit the like button, as it helps the channel grow. Make sure you go ahead and subscribe to the channel and turn on your notifications so that way you're notified whenever I upload new videos to the channel. And share this with a family member or friend. Love you guys. I appreciate you all, and I'll see you guys in the next one.